Welcome, dear viewers, to Pages from History, where we unlock the mysteries of our past to illuminate our present. Today, we embark on an extraordinary journey to discover the true beginning of Santa Claus's story, a tale rooted not in fantasy, but in the dramatic reality of the ancient world. This is the remarkable account of Saint Nicholas, the historical figure whose compassion and courage created a legend that has touched billions of hearts across countless generations. Stay with us until the final revelation, for this story holds surprises and truths that will forever transform how you understand this beloved icon of Christmas magic. First, the golden child of ancient Patara. The Mediterranean sun blazed mercilessly over the ancient city of Patara in the year 270 AD, its white marble temples gleaming like precious jewels. In the wealthiest quarter where Roman architecture displayed imperial grandeur, a child's first cry announced a birth destined to echo through eternity. Nicholas entered the world surrounded by privilege unimaginable to common citizens, born to Epiphanius and Johanna, devout Christians whose merchant fortune rivaled provincial governors. Their estates sprawled across hillsides overlooking bustling harbors where grain ships from Egypt anchored beside vessels carrying Syrian silks and Arabian spices. The infant grew into childhood within marble-columned halls adorned with intricate mosaics depicting mythological scenes and geometric patterns of breathtaking complexity. Silver fountains cooled courtyards where imported peacocks strutted beside flowering gardens tended by dozens of servants who answered his every summons. Young Nicholas studied under private tutors who arrived in covered carriages, their scrolls containing philosophical wisdom from Athens and sacred scriptures from Jerusalem. His sharp mind absorbed knowledge with remarkable speed, yet his compassionate heart remained fixed on the beggars visible beyond ornate bronze gates. His parents taught him that immense wealth carried sacred responsibility, that fortune was divine stewardship demanding service to those forgotten by empire. They personally distributed bread to widows, paid debts for imprisoned debtors, and secretly funded dowries for poor families' daughters facing desperate futures. When Nicholas reached his 13th year, catastrophe struck with the terrible swiftness of Mediterranean storms that appear from cloudless skies. A devastating plague swept through Patara's crowded lower districts, climbing steadily toward the hills where wealthy families believed marble walls provided protection. Epiphanius and Johanna contracted the deadly illness while personally caring for afflicted families, their Christian duty overcoming natural self-preservation instincts. Within 7 agonizing days, both parents perished, leaving their only son orphaned but inheriting a fortune that could sustain generations in luxury. Nicholas stood at their burial ceremony, incense smoke rising toward azure skies, surrounded by relatives already calculating their shares of inheritance. In that moment of profound grief, the young nobleman made a sacred vow that would alter human history's trajectory forever. He would dedicate every gold coin, every property, every possession to continuing his parents' mission of secret generosity and transformative compassion. His relatives whispered disapproval in shadowed corridors, but Nicholas had already begun his revolutionary journey towards sainthood and immortal legend. Second, the secret gold that transformed darkness. Within weeks, mysterious stories began circulating through Patara's narrow cobblestone streets about inexplicable gifts appearing during moonless nights. Nicholas had adopted his parents' practice of nocturnal charity, believing that generosity conducted in secrecy preserved both givers' humility and receivers' dignity. In the city's poorest quarter, where wooden structures leaned precariously against crumbling ancient walls, lived a ruined nobleman named Basilios. 3 beautiful daughters shared his single-room dwelling, their futures catastrophically hopeless without dowries to attract honorable marriage proposals from respectable families. Basilios paced sleepless through endless nights, tormented by the unbearable choice that poverty's crushing weight had imposed upon his household. Without adequate dowries, his daughters faced only 2 terrible paths: permanent spinsterhood, social death, or surrender to harbor brothels serving Roman sailors. Nicholas discovered this family's desperate situation through marketplace whispers, where gossips traded tragic stories like merchants exchanged foreign coins. He conceived a daring plan requiring perfect timing, absolute stealth, and the courage to act when most citizens slept behind locked doors. On the eldest daughter's 20th birthday eve, when family desperation had reached its unbearable crescendo, Nicholas prepared his extraordinary intervention. He filled a leather pouch with gold coins, sufficient for a substantial dowry, then wrapped it carefully in crimson silk from his mother's wardrobe. At midnight, when even stray dogs sought shelter and city watchmen dozed at their posts, Nicholas donned a dark cloak, rendering him invisible. He approached Basilios's humble dwelling with practiced silence, moving through shadows like a spirit haunting Patara's ancient streets. The family's windows stood open, catching any breeze that might relieve oppressive summer heat and poverty's suffocating spiritual desperation. With practiced accuracy, Nicholas hurled the weighted pouch through the darkness, hearing its soft thud as gold landed on earthen floor. He vanished into protective shadows before anyone could investigate, his heart pounding with exhilaration as he imagined tomorrow's joyful discovery. Behind him, the pouch gleamed in moonlight streaming through the window, a miracle materialized from darkness into desperate lives. Basilios discovered the gold at dawn and collapsed weeping uncontrollably, convinced divine intervention had answered prayers whispered in desperate midnight solitude. The eldest daughter married within months to a kind merchant, her wedding celebrated with rare joy in a neighborhood accustomed to tragedy. 1 year later, as the second daughter approached marriageable age, Nicholas repeated his nocturnal mission with identical precision and generous anonymity. Again, the gold arrived through darkness. Again, the family celebrated with grateful tears. And again, Nicholas disappeared like morning mist. When the third daughter's time approached, Basilios determined to discover his mysterious benefactor's identity by maintaining vigilant watch through endless nights. He positioned himself beside the window, fighting exhaustion's temptation, waiting for the miracle that had twice rescued his family from ruin. Nicholas arrived as expected on the appointed night, his pouch of gold arcing toward the window with practiced accuracy born of experience. But this time, Basilios lunged forward with desperate speed, grasping the young nobleman's cloak before he could melt back into darkness. The old man fell to his knees before Nicholas, tears streaming down weathered cheeks as he attempted to kiss his benefactor's feet. Nicholas lifted him gently, extracting a solemn promise that Basilios would never reveal the gift-giver's identity while both men lived. Third, the bishop who defied imperial power. 2. Years passed like Mediterranean tides, and Nicholas's reputation for wisdom and fearless compassion spread across Byzantine provinces like wildfire, consuming dried grass. When elderly Bishop Theodosius of Myra died peacefully, church leaders gathered in heated theological debate, unable to agree on a worthy successor. The eldest priest experienced a vivid prophetic vision during midnight prayer, seeing a figure clothed in crimson entering the cathedral at dawn. He commanded fellow clergy to watch the bronze doors and immediately anoint the first Nicholas who crossed the threshold as divinely appointed leader. Nicholas, now in his early 30s, with a beard showing first traces of silver, had journeyed to Myra for morning prayers, unaware destiny awaited. He entered to find the entire assembled clergy surrounding him with ceremonial robes, sacred oils, and solemn declarations of episcopal authority. Thus, Nicholas became Bishop of Myra, his ecclesiastical jurisdiction extending across coastal regions where Christianity struggled against Roman persecution and pagan traditions. He transformed the position from ceremonial leadership into active advocacy, personally confronting injustice wherever corruption's shadows darkened his beloved province. When cruel Roman governor Eustathius arrived to enforce Emperor Diocletian's brutal anti-Christian edicts, Nicholas faced him in the public forum. The young bishop spoke with such fearless eloquence and moral conviction that even hardened Roman soldiers shifted uncomfortably, recognizing undeniable truth. Eustathius, enraged by this public defiance of imperial authority, ordered Nicholas's immediate imprisonment in Myra's darkest underground dungeon. The bishop walked calmly to his cell, refusing to show fear, transforming cold stone walls into his personal monastery of prayer. For 5 torturous years, Nicholas endured chains and darkness, yet his spirit remained unbroken by torture or prolonged isolation's psychological devastation. Fellow prisoners reported hearing him singing sacred hymns through endless nights, his voice carrying hope through corridors designed for absolute despair. He shared his meager bread with weaker inmates, tended their wounds with torn strips from his own deteriorating garments, and blessed them daily. Prison guards whispered among themselves about this strange prisoner, whose joy seemed to increase despite escalating suffering and deprivation. When Constantine seized imperial power and Christianity achieved legal recognition throughout the empire, Nicholas emerged from prison gaunt but spiritually glorified. He returned to Myra where enormous crowds lined the streets, throwing flowers before his feet and weeping at his living testament of endurance. But Nicholas refused celebration or personal recognition, immediately resuming his mission feeding orphans, sheltering widows, and confronting wealthy merchants exploiting desperate customers. His cathedral became a sanctuary where the powerless found protection and the powerful faced uncomfortable moral truths about their failures. Fourth, miracles that transcended natural law. The year 325 brought catastrophic famine when grain ships from Egypt mysteriously failed to reach Anatolia's desperate coastal cities for months. Myra's warehouses stood completely empty. Children cried from hunger's agony, and panic spread through streets where skeletal figures searched desperately for sustenance. Nicholas learned that Emperor Constantine's massive grain fleet had anchored in Myra's harbor, destined exclusively for Constantinople but carrying sufficient wheat. The imperial captain adamantly refused to spare a single measure, knowing Rome's punishment for disobedience meant death for him and enslavement. The bishop approached the anchored ship at midnight, his robes billowing in salt-scented wind, his spiritual presence commanding attention despite humble appearance. He looked directly into the captain's eyes and spoke with such supernatural authority that the man felt his resistance crumbling like ancient pottery. Nicholas promised that if the captain unloaded grain for Myra's starving population, Constantinople would miraculously receive its full intended measure despite shortfall. The captain, moved by inexplicable faith in this extraordinary bishop's promise, ordered his crew to fill Myra's empty warehouses with life-saving grain. When the ships finally reached Constantinople weeks later, imperial accountants carefully weighed the grain and found not a single measure missing from expected quantities. The captain fell to his knees in overwhelming thanksgiving, later testifying before Emperor Constantine about the supernatural miracle he had personally witnessed. In another legendary incident, 3 innocent merchants awaited execution in Myra's prison, falsely accused of sedition by corrupt officials coveting their valuable property. Nicholas stormed into the execution grounds as the executioner raised his sword high, physically pushing the descending blade aside with bare hands. He confronted the presiding judge publicly, exposing detailed evidence of bribery and fabricated testimony that had condemned innocent men to satisfy official greed. The judge, unable to withstand Nicholas's moral authority and irrefutable evidence, confessed his corruption before the assembled crowd and freed the prisoners. Sailors throughout the Mediterranean began invoking Nicholas's name during terrible storms, reporting miraculous calming of waves when his intercession was sincerely sought. One desperate crew swore their rapidly sinking vessel was saved when a figure in bishop's robes mysteriously appeared on deck, directing them through impossible fog. Parents brought sick children to Nicholas's cathedral, where his prayers and gentle touch seemed to reverse illnesses that ancient medicine couldn't cure. While Nicholas attributed everything to divine grace rather than personal power, countless witnesses insisted his very presence carried healing energy beyond natural explanation. These miraculous accounts multiplied across provinces and decades, each story adding layers to the growing legend of the bishop, whose compassion transcended physical laws. Nicholas himself dismissed such talk, insisting he was merely a faithful servant following Christ's example of selfless love and miraculous intervention. Fifth, from ancient saint to immortal Christmas legend, Nicholas died peacefully on December 6, 343 AD. His body laid to rest in Myra's cathedral amidst unprecedented mourning from Christians throughout the Byzantine world. Within hours, pilgrims reported fragrant oil mysteriously seeping from his tomb, possessing healing properties that drew thousands seeking miracles and spiritual renewal. His tomb became one of Christianity's most visited shrines, eclipsing even certain sites in Jerusalem for pilgrims traveling from distant European kingdoms. Stories of his generosity and miracles spread along trade routes, carried by merchants who embellished tales with each retelling through different languages. In medieval Europe, his legend merged beautifully with pre-Christian winter traditions, his gift-giving echoing ancient Germanic and Norse celebration customs. Dutch settlers brought Santa Claus traditions to America, where the name gradually transformed into the familiar Santa Claus we recognize universally today. The red bishop's robes evolved into red suits, trimmed with white fur, reflecting Nordic winters rather than Mediterranean sunshine and Byzantine grandeur. His secret nocturnal gift-giving became the foundation for Christmas Eve traditions celebrated across continents and countless cultural variations worldwide. The historical Nicholas of Myra gradually disappeared beneath layers of accumulated legend, his real story obscured by commercialization and mythological embellishment. Yet the essential spirit remained unchanged. One man's radical commitment to anonymous generosity and compassionate intervention transformed human civilization's moral imagination. His feast day, December 6th, is still celebrated across Europe, with children receiving gifts and communities honoring charitable service to the less fortunate. Churches bearing his name dot the global landscape from Russian Orthodoxy to Western cathedrals, each preserving fragments of his enduring spiritual legacy. A modern Santa Claus, with his North Pole workshop and reindeer-drawn sleigh, seems impossibly distant from ancient Myra's sun-baked marble streets and harbor. But beneath the mythology pulses that same revolutionary concept, that secret kindness, unexpected generosity, and selfless compassion can transform despair into joy. Nicholas's true miracle wasn't defying natural laws, but demonstrating that human nature could transcend selfishness through disciplined love and practiced generosity. His legacy challenges every generation to consider how individual choices compound into cultural transformation that outlasts mighty empires and spans millennia. The gold thrown through midnight windows became gifts beneath Christmas trees, the bishop's compassion became Santa's magic, and ancient Lycia's saint became humanity's reminder. This is the true beginning of Santa Claus's story, not a myth, but a historical reality of one person's decision to live radically differently. The journey from Nicholas of Myra to Santa Claus reveals how history and legend intertwine to create enduring cultural truths that transcend time and geography. This ancient bishop's revolutionary commitment to secret generosity, his courage confronting injustice and imperial power, and his miracles of compassion, planted seeds that bloomed across 17 centuries into the beloved figure who represents the spirit of giving worldwide. Pages from History brings you these hidden origins that illuminate our present traditions and inspire our future actions. If this exploration moved you, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to join our community discovering the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Until our next historical journey, may you carry forward the spirit of unexpected kindness that defined St. Nicholas's extraordinary life and eternal legacy.